Have you ever felt tired without doing anything physically hard, like your energy is always drained, even though all you did was reply to people, show up for everyone, and stay available all the time? The truth most people don't realize is that being too available slowly weakens your presence, because when you are always easy to reach, your time loses value and your mind never gets the silence it needs to grow stronger. Buddhism teaches that real power is not about doing more, chasing more, or proving more. It is about knowing when to step back, when to do less, and when to protect your energy without guilt. So, if you feel like people take you for granted, if you feel exhausted from always being there, and if you want to become calmer, stronger, and more respected without becoming cold, then stay with me. Because these 7 lessons will completely change how you see availability, effort, and inner power. 1. Stop giving everyone instant access to you. Constant access slowly weakens your presence, not because you are less important, but because when there are no boundaries around your time, people stop feeling the value of your energy. Think about how often you reply immediately, how often you interrupt your own routine just to respond, how often you put your own tasks aside because someone else wants your attention. At first, it feels kind and responsible, but over time it turns into a habit where your life revolves around reacting instead of living intentionally. When you are always available, you teach people that your attention is unlimited, and without realizing it, they begin to expect you to always be there, always ready, always open, even when you are tired or mentally drained. Buddhism teaches that awareness begins with observing where your energy flows, because your time is your life, and wherever your time goes, your mind follows. If your time constantly belongs to others, your thoughts never settle, your focus becomes scattered, and your inner calm slowly disappears. Many people fear that slowing down their responses will make them seem cold or distant. But the truth is that choosing when to engage is not arrogance, it is discipline. Imagine the difference between reacting to every message instantly and taking a moment to breathe, reflect, and respond when you are truly present. One comes from urgency and pressure, the other comes from clarity and control. When you pause instead of reacting immediately, you begin to feel the power of choice again, and that small shift changes how you experience your day. You stop feeling pulled in every direction, and you start feeling grounded within yourself. Buddhism reminds us that intentional action is stronger than impulsive reaction, because intentional action comes from awareness, not from fear of disappointing others. Another important truth is that constant access does not create deeper connection. It often creates emotional exhaustion. When people know you are always reachable, they rarely consider your mental state, not out of disrespect, but because your availability has become normal to them. But when you create healthy space, people naturally learn to respect your time more, and you begin to respect it as well. This does not mean ignoring people or becoming distant. It means responding from calmness instead of pressure. It means allowing yourself to finish your work, enjoy your quiet moments, and protect your mental clarity before giving your energy away. Power grows when your actions come from intention rather than urgency, because a person who chooses their presence carefully carries a quiet strength that others can feel without words. 2. Doing less is not laziness, it's detachment from proving. Many people feel uncomfortable doing less because deep inside they believe their value comes from constant effort. They think if they slow down, people will forget them, replace them, or stop caring. So they keep saying yes, keep helping, keep talking, keep showing up, even when they are mentally exhausted. But Buddhism teaches that this constant activity is often not true dedication. It is attachment to approval. It is the hidden need to prove that you matter. When your actions come from proving instead of peace, you slowly lose connection with yourself, because your energy is always directed outward, always chasing validation, always trying to maintain an image. Doing less does not mean becoming careless or irresponsible. It means removing the pressure to perform for acceptance. Think about how often you push yourself to reply quickly, give extra effort, or stay emotionally available even when you need rest. Most of the time, this behavior comes from fear, not from genuine intention. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of losing connection, fear of not being seen as important. Buddhism encourages you to observe this fear without judgment, because awareness is the first step toward freedom. When you notice that you are doing too much just to feel valued, you begin to understand that your worth is not something that must be constantly demonstrated. When you detach from proving, your actions become more meaningful because they come from choice instead of pressure. You start asking yourself simple questions before giving your energy. Am I doing this because I truly want to, or because I feel I have to? That small moment of reflection changes everything. Instead of rushing to fill every silence, you allow space. Instead of over-explaining, you speak only when it feels necessary. Instead of carrying every emotional burden, you learn to let people handle their own responsibilities. And slowly, you realize that doing less actually brings more clarity, more focus, and more calmness into your life. Buddhism teaches that strength comes from balance, not from constant motion. When you stop proving yourself through endless effort, you begin to feel lighter, because your energy is no longer tied to other people's reactions. You become less reactive and more grounded. Your presence feels stronger because it is not scattered everywhere. Doing less becomes an act of self-respect, a reminder that your value is not measured by how busy you appear, but by how aligned you feel within yourself. And when your actions come from inner calm instead of external pressure, you naturally become more powerful without needing to force anything. 3. When you're always available, you teach people to take you for granted. One of the hardest truths to accept is that people don't always realize how much effort you are giving when you never step back. When you are always present, always replying, always helping, and always adjusting your life around others, your effort slowly becomes invisible. Not because people want to disrespect you, but because the human mind quickly adapts to what feels constant. When something is always there, it stops feeling special. Buddhism teaches that attachment without balance creates suffering, and constant availability is a form of attachment that quietly drains your energy while reducing your value in the eyes of others. Think about how patterns are created in everyday life. If you reply instantly every time, people begin to expect instant replies. If you always forgive quickly, people assume they don't need to be careful with your feelings. If you always say yes, people stop asking whether you are comfortable or not. Over time, your kindness turns into an expectation rather than an appreciation. This does not mean you should stop being kind. It means you must understand how your behavior teaches others how to treat you. Buddhism encourages mindful awareness, and mindful awareness includes noticing when generosity turns into self-neglect. When you step back slightly and create space, something important happens. People begin to feel your absence, and absence creates awareness. They notice when you are not immediately available, and that pause allows appreciation to grow again. More importantly, you begin to notice your own value. You realize that your energy is not endless, and you start protecting it instead of giving it away automatically. This shift is not about punishing anyone. It is about restoring balance between giving and preserving your inner peace. It is also important to understand that being taken for granted often begins within your own mindset. If you believe your role is to always be there no matter what, you silently accept situations that drain you. Buddhism teaches that compassion must include yourself, because when you neglect your own well-being, your kindness becomes heavy rather than peaceful. By becoming slightly less available, you remind both yourself and others that your time has meaning. You stop overextending yourself, and you begin to give from a place of calm choice rather than emotional pressure. And in that calm choice, your presence becomes stronger because it is no longer constant noise. It becomes something people genuinely value when it appears. 4. Silence builds power when words are cheap. Many people believe that strength comes from always having something to say, always explaining themselves, always responding quickly so that no misunderstanding can exist. But Buddhism teaches a deeper truth. Not every situation requires your voice, and not every emotion deserves immediate expression. When you are constantly available, you often feel the need to fill every gap with words. You reply instantly, you clarify everything, you defend your intentions, you try to keep conversations alive even when they are draining you. And slowly, your words begin to lose weight because they are always present. When words become constant, they stop feeling meaningful, and your energy becomes scattered across endless conversations that leave your mind restless. Silence, however, is not emptiness. Silence is awareness. It is the space where your thoughts settle and your emotions become clear. Buddhism encourages mindful speech, which means speaking only when it adds value, not when it comes from anxiety or fear of being misunderstood. When you stop reacting immediately and allow silence to exist, you begin to notice something powerful. Your mind slows down. Instead of reacting from emotion, you observe from calmness. Instead of explaining yourself repeatedly, you allow your actions to speak. And this shift protects your inner peace because you are no longer exhausting yourself trying to control how others perceive you. Many people fear silence because they associate it with rejection or distance. But true silence is not about pushing people away. It is about protecting your mental clarity. Think about how often unnecessary words create confusion. When emotions are high, conversations become heavy, and people say things they later regret. But when you choose silence in moments of tension, you give yourself the chance to respond with wisdom instead of impulse. Buddhism teaches that restraint is a form of strength, because restraint shows that you are guided by awareness, not by temporary feelings. A calm pause can prevent unnecessary conflict, protect your dignity, and help you maintain balance even when situations feel intense. Silence also reveals the truth about connections. When you stop filling every moment with conversation, you begin to see who values your presence beyond constant interaction. Some people may feel uncomfortable when you become quieter, not because you are wrong, but because they were used to your constant availability. Others will respect your calmness and adjust naturally. This clarity is important because it helps you understand which relationships are built on genuine connection and which ones rely only on your endless energy. In Buddhism, silence is often seen as a form of meditation, a way to reconnect with your inner world instead of being pulled endlessly into external noise. Another powerful aspect of silence is that it strengthens your emotional control. When you stop reacting to every message, every comment, or every change in someone's mood, you reclaim your attention. You learn that not every thought needs to be spoken, and not every feeling needs to be shared immediately. This creates a sense of groundedness, where your words become intentional instead of automatic. People begin to listen more carefully when you speak less, because your voice carries calm authority rather than urgency. And, most importantly, you start feeling lighter, because you are no longer carrying the pressure to respond to everything around you. Silence builds power because it shifts your focus inward. Instead of seeking validation through conversation, you begin to understand yourself more deeply. You notice your patterns, your triggers, your reactions. You learn to sit with discomfort instead of escaping it through constant communication. Buddhism teaches that true strength comes from understanding the mind, and silence is one of the most direct ways to see your thoughts clearly. When you allow moments of quiet to exist, you begin to realize that peace is not found in endless talking, but in balanced presence. So becoming less available through silence does not mean becoming distant or cold. It means learning to speak with purpose and rest in stillness when words are unnecessary. It means allowing your energy to recharge instead of being spent on every small interaction. Over time, this practice changes how people experience you. Your presence feels calmer, your words feel more intentional, and your reactions feel grounded. Silence becomes a shield that protects your peace and a tool that strengthens your inner power, reminding you that true influence does not come from saying more, but from knowing when to say nothing at all. 5. Work less on people, work more on your inner world. One of the deepest reasons people become overly available is because their attention is constantly directed outward. They spend their energy trying to maintain connections, trying to stay liked, trying to respond perfectly, trying to keep everyone comfortable, and slowly they forget to invest that same care into themselves. Buddhism teaches that true stability does not come from managing people, it comes from cultivating the inner world. When your focus is always on others, your mind becomes restless because it depends on reactions, responses, and approval. But when you begin to redirect your attention inward, something powerful happens. Your sense of worth stops depending on how others treat you. Think about how much emotional energy is spent worrying about messages, conversations, impressions, and expectations. You analyze tone, you overthink replies, you wonder if you did enough or said the right thing. This constant mental activity drains your focus and leaves little space for personal growth. Buddhism encourages awareness of where your thoughts live, because wherever your thoughts live, your life follows. If your thoughts live in other people's opinions, you lose connection with your own direction. But when you shift your effort toward your inner world, you begin to build something that cannot be shaken by external changes. Working more on your inner world means developing habits that strengthen your mind rather than exhaust it. It means creating moments of stillness where you reflect on your emotions instead of reacting to them instantly. It means investing time in learning, in health, in discipline, in purpose. When you start focusing on your own growth, you notice that the urge to be constantly available begins to fade naturally. You are no longer searching for distraction through endless interaction, because you are busy building a life that feels meaningful from within. Buddhism calls this cultivation of self-awareness, and it transforms the way you experience relationships because you stop depending on others to fill emotional gaps. Another important aspect of working on your inner world is learning to sit with yourself without discomfort. Many people stay overly available because silence feels unfamiliar. They fill their time with conversations because being alone with their thoughts feels heavy. But Buddhism teaches that solitude is not loneliness, it is clarity. When you spend time strengthening your inner world, you begin to understand your patterns, your fears, and your desires more clearly. You stop reacting automatically, and you start making conscious choices about where your energy goes. This creates a calm confidence that others can feel, because your actions no longer come from neediness, they come from stability. As you continue to invest in yourself, your relationships also begin to change in a healthier way. You stop overextending yourself emotionally, and you start engaging from a place of balance. Instead of trying to fix everyone's problems or carry every emotional burden, you allow others to grow independently. Buddhism teaches compassion with wisdom, which means caring without losing yourself. When you focus on strengthening your own mind, you become less reactive and more grounded, and that grounded energy naturally creates respect around you. Over time, you begin to realize that doing less for others does not make you distant. It allows you to show up with genuine presence instead of exhaustion. Your conversations become more meaningful because they come from calmness rather than pressure. Your time feels more valuable because it is not scattered everywhere. And most importantly, you begin to feel peaceful even when you are alone, because your inner world becomes a place of strength rather than emptiness. Working on your inner world is not about isolation, it is about balance. It is understanding that the more stable you become within yourself, the healthier your connections become naturally. Buddhism reminds us that the strongest foundation is built quietly through small daily practices of awareness and discipline. When you stop pouring all your energy into managing people and start investing it into understanding yourself, you develop a quiet power that does not need constant attention to exist. And that power is what makes you emotionally strong, because no matter what happens around you, your peace remains rooted inside. 6. Unavailability reveals the truth about people. One of the most powerful but uncomfortable truths about becoming less available is that it changes how people respond to you, and through that change, you begin to see reality more clearly. When you are always present, always replying, always adjusting your time, it becomes difficult to understand who truly values you and who simply enjoys your constant access. Buddhism teaches that awareness grows when attachment decreases, because attachment often blinds you to patterns that are already there. The moment you step back slightly and protect your time, the reactions around you begin to shift, and those reactions become lessons that reveal the true nature of your relationships. At first, becoming less available may feel strange. You might notice that some people become quieter, some become impatient, and some even question why you have changed. This is not because you did something wrong. It is because they were used to a version of you that gave endlessly without pause. Buddhism reminds us that people respond not only to who you are, but to the habits you create. When you change those habits, you change the dynamic, and the dynamic reveals hidden expectations. Some individuals will respect your boundaries naturally and continue showing up with understanding and patience. These are the people who value you as a person, not just as a source of attention. Others may react with frustration or distance, and this response can feel painful, but it also brings clarity because it shows who was attached to your availability rather than to your presence. Unavailability acts like a mirror. It reflects intentions that were previously invisible when you were constantly engaged. When you were always there, it was easy for people to rely on you without thinking deeply about your needs. But when you create space, those who truly care will adapt, while those who were only comfortable with unlimited access may drift away. Buddhism teaches that non-attachment allows you to observe without judgment, meaning you do not need to blame anyone or become bitter. You simply watch how people respond to your calm boundaries, and through observation, you learn where your energy is best invested. Another important lesson is that unavailability also reveals truths about yourself. You begin to notice how strongly you were attached to being needed or being seen as dependable. At first, stepping back may create feelings of guilt or discomfort because your identity may have been built around always being there for others. But Buddhism encourages self-compassion during this process, reminding you that growth often feels unfamiliar. As you continue practicing balanced availability, you start to feel lighter because you are no longer carrying emotional responsibilities that were never truly yours. When you become less available, conversations also become more intentional. People who value you will reach out with genuine interest rather than constant small demands. Interactions begin to feel calmer and more meaningful because they are no longer driven by urgency. Buddhism teaches that quality matters more than quantity, and this principle applies deeply to relationships. Instead of many shallow interactions that drain your energy, you begin to experience fewer but more balanced connections that nourish your peace. It is also important to understand that unavailability is not about testing people or creating distance intentionally. It is about returning to balance. When your life has space, you gain perspective. You notice patterns that were hidden in constant motion. You see who reaches out consistently, who respects your time, and who only appears when it is convenient. This clarity helps you make decisions from wisdom rather than emotion, because you are no longer reacting impulsively to every interaction. Over time, as you maintain healthy boundaries, you will notice that your relationships either deepen or fade naturally. Those who remain will respect your pace, your silence, and your growth. Those who leave were often connected to the version of you that was endlessly available, and their absence creates room for healthier energy in your life. Buddhism teaches that letting go is not always loss. Sometimes it is the natural result of becoming more aware. When you stop forcing connections through constant availability, what remains is more authentic and aligned with your inner peace. Unavailability, when practiced with calm intention, becomes a tool for understanding rather than separation. It allows you to step out of emotional confusion and see reality with clarity. You begin to realize that your energy is precious, and not every connection deserves unlimited access to it. And as this understanding grows, you feel stronger, because you are no longer trying to maintain every bond out of fear. Instead, you are allowing relationships to exist in a balanced way, guided by mutual respect and quiet understanding, which is exactly the kind of harmony Buddhism encourages in every aspect of life. 7. Your presence becomes stronger when you stop overgiving. There comes a moment in life when you begin to realize that doing more does not always make you stronger. and giving more does not always make you more valuable. Many people grow up believing that constant effort, endless availability, and unlimited kindness will make others respect them deeply. They believe that if they stay present all the time, if they answer every message quickly, if they always adjust their life around others, then they will secure love, appreciation, and importance. But slowly, through experience, a deeper truth begins to reveal itself. When you overgive without balance, your presence loses its weight. Not because you lack worth, but because your energy becomes too common, too predictable, too easy to access. Buddhism teaches that balance is the foundation of strength, and true power grows not from constant effort, but from mindful restraint. Overgiving often begins with a beautiful intention. You want to be kind, you want to be reliable, you want to be supportive, and these qualities are not weaknesses. But when kindness loses boundaries, it turns into emotional exhaustion. You begin to say yes when your mind is tired. You continue conversations when your heart needs silence. You give attention even when you need rest, and slowly your inner world becomes heavy because you are pouring energy outward without replenishing it inward. Buddhism explains that attachment to being needed can become a hidden form of suffering because it ties your sense of value to how much you give rather than who you are. Think about how presence works in everyday life. When something is rare, it feels meaningful. When something appears only when it truly matters, it carries weight. But when something is constant without pause, it blends into the background. The same principle applies to your energy. When you are always available, people begin to experience your presence as normal instead of special. Your words feel lighter, your attention feels expected, and your effort becomes invisible. This does not mean people do not care about you. It simply means the human mind adapts quickly to what feels permanent. Buddhism teaches that awareness of this pattern helps you maintain balance between generosity and self-respect. The moment you begin to stop overgiving, something subtle yet powerful shifts inside you. At first, it may feel uncomfortable. You may notice a quiet urge to explain yourself more, to fill silence with action, or to return to old habits of constant engagement. But if you remain patient with yourself, you begin to feel a new sense of calm. Your energy stops feeling scattered, and your thoughts become clearer. You realize that doing less does not make you invisible. It allows your presence to become intentional. Instead of being everywhere for everyone, you start choosing where your attention truly belongs. And through that choice, your presence begins to carry quiet strength. Buddhism often speaks about the middle path, a way of living that avoids extremes. Overgiving is an extreme just as much as complete withdrawal is. The goal is not to become distant or cold. The goal is to give from a place of balance. When your actions come from calm awareness rather than emotional pressure, your interactions become more meaningful. You listen more deeply, speak more thoughtfully, and engage with purpose instead of urgency. This transformation changes how people experience you, because your presence no longer feels automatic. It feels intentional and grounded. Another important truth is that stopping overgiving allows you to reconnect with yourself. When your schedule is no longer filled with constant reactions, you begin to notice parts of your life that were previously neglected. You rediscover your own thoughts, your own interests, your own rhythm. Buddhism teaches that inner awareness grows when external noise decreases, and by stepping back from endless giving, you create the silence needed for self-understanding. This silence is not emptiness. It is a space where your mind can rest and your energy can rebuild. As you continue practicing balanced presence, you may notice that some people respond differently. Those who truly respect you will adjust naturally, understanding that your boundaries are part of your growth. Others may feel confused or distant, not because you have changed negatively, but because the dynamic has shifted. Buddhism encourages compassion during this process, reminding you that everyone responds from their own level of awareness. Your task is not to control their reactions, but to remain grounded in your own clarity. Over time, the relationships that remain will feel calmer and more genuine, because they are built on mutual respect rather than constant availability. Stopping overgiving also changes how you feel about yourself. You begin to see that your value does not come from how much you sacrifice, but from how present you are when you choose to engage. This realization builds quiet confidence, because you no longer depend on constant interaction to feel important. Instead, you begin to trust your own rhythm. You understand that stepping back is not rejection, it is renewal. And through this renewal, your presence becomes stronger, because it is rooted in balance rather than exhaustion. Buddhism teaches that true strength is calm and steady, not loud or overwhelming. When you stop overgiving, you embody this calm strength. Your actions slow down, but your impact deepens. Your words become fewer, but they carry more meaning. Your time becomes protected, and through that protection, your mind becomes clearer. You begin to notice small details in your life that were once hidden by constant busyness. You feel more connected to your breath, your thoughts, and your surroundings. This inner clarity reflects outwardly, and people begin to sense a quiet confidence in you that does not need to be announced. Over time, you may realize that the real transformation is not in how others treat you, but in how you treat yourself. You stop rushing to be everywhere. You allow yourself moments of rest without guilt. You learn to say no without long explanations, and with each small boundary, your sense of self grows stronger. Buddhism describes this as freedom from attachment, a state where your happiness is no longer tied to constant activity or external approval. In this state, you still care deeply about others, but you care for yourself with equal compassion. This truth is simple yet powerful. Your presence becomes stronger when it is intentional. When you stop overgiving, you create space for authenticity. You allow your actions to come from genuine desire rather than obligation. You begin to live with a quiet rhythm that feels sustainable and peaceful. And in that rhythm, you discover a new kind of power, a power that does not rely on constant effort, but grows naturally from balance. So as you move forward, remember that doing less is not losing your value, it is protecting it. Overgiving may feel like connection, but balanced presence creates deeper understanding. When you choose when and how to give your energy, you transform your life into something calmer, more focused, and more meaningful. Buddhism reminds us that strength is not found in endless action, but in mindful awareness. And the moment you learn to step back without guilt, to give without losing yourself, and to rest without fear, your presence becomes something rare and powerful, something that carries quiet influence simply because it comes from a place of inner peace. 8. You don't lose power by doing less. You discover where your real strength lies. There is a moment in life when you begin to question everything you were taught about effort and availability. For a long time, you may have believed that being constantly active, constantly responsive, and constantly present was the way to build respect and connection. You thought that the more you did, the more powerful you would become. But slowly, through experience, you start to feel something different. You notice that the more you overextend yourself, the more tired your mind becomes, and the more your presence begins to feel scattered. Buddhism teaches that true strength does not come from endless action. It comes from inner stability. And sometimes, doing less is not a loss of power. It is the moment you finally discover where your real strength lives. Many people associate activity with importance. They believe that if they slow down, they will become invisible, that if they step back, they will lose influence. But Buddhism invites you to observe a different perspective. It asks you to notice the difference between movement and meaning. Movement is constant action, constant talking, constant engagement, while meaning comes from intention. When your actions are guided by intention rather than fear, your presence becomes deeper and more grounded. Doing less does not remove your influence, it concentrates it. Instead of spreading your energy across countless interactions, you begin to focus it where it truly matters, and that focus creates quiet power. At first, this shift may feel uncomfortable because your mind has been trained to associate busyness with worth. You might feel the urge to fill every moment with productivity or interaction. You might wonder if people will notice your absence or question your change in rhythm. Buddhism teaches that discomfort often appears when attachment begins to loosen, because you are stepping away from familiar habits. When you allow yourself to sit with that discomfort instead of escaping it, you begin to understand yourself more clearly. You notice how much of your energy was spent reacting instead of creating, responding instead of reflecting. And slowly, you begin to see that slowing down gives you space to think, to breathe, and to reconnect with your own direction. Another important realization is that real strength is internal, not external. When your sense of power depends on constant activity, you become vulnerable to exhaustion. But when your strength comes from inner calm, you can remain steady even when nothing is happening around you. Buddhism emphasizes the practice of mindfulness, which teaches you to observe your thoughts without being controlled by them. Through mindfulness, you begin to see that doing less is not emptiness, it is clarity. It is the ability to step back from noise and recognize what truly deserves your attention. And in that clarity, your decisions become more intentional, your actions become more precise, and your energy becomes more aligned with your values. As you continue practicing balanced effort, you may notice a surprising change in how people respond to you. Instead of expecting instant replies or constant presence, they begin to experience your interactions as more meaningful. Your words carry more weight because they are not lost in endless conversation. Your time feels more valuable because it is not always available. Buddhism teaches that moderation creates harmony, and when your presence is balanced, it naturally gains respect. This respect does not come from distance or coldness. It comes from the quiet confidence that arises when you no longer feel the need to prove your worth through constant action. Doing less also allows you to build a stronger connection with your inner world. Without the pressure to be constantly engaged, you begin to notice subtle details in your life that were previously overlooked. You become more aware of your emotions, more attentive to your thoughts, and more connected to your own rhythm. Buddhism describes this as returning to the present moment, a state where you are fully aware of what is happening without rushing toward the next task. In this state, you begin to understand that your real strength is not in how much you do, but in how deeply you experience each moment. You start to feel grounded, because your attention is no longer scattered across endless distractions. There is also a powerful lesson in learning to trust yourself. When you stop doing everything for everyone, you create space to listen to your own intuition. You begin to recognize when something truly deserves your effort, and when it is simply a habit driven by fear of missing out. Buddhism teaches that wisdom grows from observation, and through this observation, you begin to understand your own boundaries more clearly. You realize that saying no is not rejection, it is alignment. It is choosing to protect your energy so that you can give your best when it truly matters. Over time, doing less becomes a form of self-respect. You stop measuring your value by how busy you appear and start measuring it by how peaceful you feel. Your schedule becomes less crowded, but your mind becomes fuller with clarity and purpose. You begin to notice that moments of stillness are not empty, they are nourishing. In those quiet moments, creativity grows, insight appears, and emotional balance strengthens. Buddhism teaches that the mind becomes stronger when it is not constantly pulled in different directions, and by doing less, you allow your mind to rest in a way that builds resilience rather than exhaustion. Another aspect of discovering your real strength is learning that presence is more powerful than performance. When you are constantly performing for others, you may feel appreciated, but that appreciation often depends on continued effort. When you are simply present, grounded, and calm, your energy feels authentic and stable. People begin to sense that you are not trying to impress or prove anything, and this authenticity creates deeper respect. Buddhism emphasizes authenticity because it removes the need for constant validation. When you are authentic, your actions come from who you are rather than from what you think others expect from you. Eventually, you reach a point where doing less no longer feels like a sacrifice. It feels natural. You begin to enjoy the simplicity of a slower pace, the clarity of fewer commitments, and the peace that comes from intentional living. Your strength becomes quiet rather than loud, steady rather than rushed. And in this quiet strength, you discover that power is not something you chase, it is something that grows naturally when you are aligned with yourself. So if you ever feel guilty for stepping back, remember that doing less is not abandoning your responsibilities, it is refining your focus. It is choosing quality over quantity, depth over speed, and peace over pressure. Buddhism reminds us that the strongest trees grow slowly, rooted deeply in the earth. In the same way, your strength grows when you allow yourself to slow down and reconnect with what truly matters. And when you discover where your real strength lives, you no longer fear being less available, because you understand that true power comes from balance, awareness, and the quiet confidence that arises when you are fully at peace within yourself. 9. The moment you become less available, your energy begins to lead instead of your words. There is a quiet shift that happens when you stop being constantly available, and it is not always visible at first. It does not come from dramatic actions or loud changes. It comes from small decisions that slowly reshape how you move through the world. When you are always present, always talking, always explaining, and always reacting, your words become the main way people experience you. But when you step back and become less available, something deeper begins to take its place. Your energy starts speaking louder than your voice. Buddhism teaches that true presence is felt, not forced. And when you reduce unnecessary action, your calmness becomes noticeable in a way that words alone could never create. Many people don't realize how much they rely on constant communication to maintain their importance. They believe that if they stop talking or responding quickly, they will be forgotten or misunderstood. So they keep filling silence with explanations, updates, and reactions. But over time, this constant output can make your presence feel ordinary because there is no space for anticipation or reflection. Buddhism encourages the practice of mindful restraint, which means allowing your actions to arise from clarity instead of urgency. When you stop rushing to respond to everything, your energy becomes steady, and that steadiness naturally draws attention without effort. Think about how different it feels when someone speaks rarely but with intention compared to someone who is always talking. The person who chooses their moments carefully often feels more grounded and influential, not because they say more, but because their presence carries weight. This is the power of balanced availability. When you become less accessible, your interactions become more meaningful because they come from awareness rather than habit. Buddhism describes this as right effort, a state where energy is used wisely rather than excessively. Instead of scattering your attention across countless small interactions, you begin to focus on what truly matters, and that focus creates depth in your presence. Another important shift happens internally. When you stop being constantly available, you begin to notice your own thoughts more clearly. Without the noise of endless communication, your mind becomes quieter, and in that quietness, you start to understand yourself better. You notice patterns in your reactions, moments where you used to respond out of fear or habit, and you begin to choose differently. Buddhism teaches that awareness grows in silence, and through that awareness, your energy becomes more centered. You no longer feel pulled in every direction because your attention is no longer divided by constant demands. As your energy becomes more grounded, people around you begin to respond differently. Some may feel your calmness and naturally adjust their pace when interacting with you. Others may become curious about your change, noticing that you no longer react instantly or overextend yourself. This change is not about controlling how others see you. It is about allowing your presence to reflect your inner balance. Buddhism emphasizes authenticity, and when your actions align with your inner state, your energy becomes consistent and trustworthy. You do not need to prove your strength because it is already visible in how you carry yourself. It is also important to understand that becoming less available does not mean withdrawing from life. It means engaging with intention rather than obligation. You still connect with people, still share your thoughts, still participate in relationships, but you do so from a place of calm choice. Instead of feeling pressured to respond immediately, you allow yourself the space to think and respond when you are truly present. This shift transforms your interactions because they become more sincere and less driven by urgency. Buddhism teaches that sincerity arises from mindfulness, and mindfulness grows when you slow down enough to notice what truly deserves your attention. You may notice that your confidence begins to change as well. When you are no longer dependent on constant communication to feel relevant, you begin to trust your own rhythm. You learn that silence does not reduce your value, and that stepping back does not mean losing connection. In fact, your presence often feels stronger because it is rooted in self-awareness rather than external validation. Buddhism reminds us that true strength is quiet and steady And when your energy becomes calm, it naturally influences the environment around you without needing to force anything. Another powerful aspect of this transformation is the way it protects your emotional well-being. When you are always available, you are constantly exposed to others' moods, expectations, and demands, which can leave you feeling drained. But when you create space, you allow yourself time to recharge and reflect. This does not make you distant, it makes you balanced. Buddhism teaches that compassion includes caring for your own mind, and balanced availability is a form of self-compassion because it ensures that your energy remains sustainable over time. As you continue to live with this awareness, you may begin to notice that your words carry more meaning when you do choose to speak. Because you are no longer filling every moment with conversation, your voice feels intentional. People listen more carefully because they sense that your words come from thoughtfulness rather than habit. This is the quiet power of energy leading instead of words. You are no longer trying to maintain importance through constant action. Your calm presence naturally communicates stability and strength. This way of living becomes natural. You no longer feel the urge to be everywhere or respond to everything. You learn to trust that your presence does not disappear when you step back. It deepens. Buddhism teaches that true influence arises from inner balance, not external noise. And when you live from that balance, you begin to feel lighter, more focused, and more at peace. Your energy becomes a reflection of your awareness, and that awareness creates a presence that feels grounded and authentic. So if you are learning to become less available, remember that this shift is not about losing connection. It is about transforming the way you show up. It is about allowing your energy to speak through calmness, allowing your silence to carry meaning, and allowing your actions to come from clarity rather than pressure. The moment you let your energy lead instead of your words, you begin to experience a deeper form of strength, one that does not depend on constant effort, but grows naturally from mindfulness, balance, and the quiet confidence that arises when you are fully aligned with yourself. 10. When you stop forcing your presence, you become unforgettable without trying. There is a powerful transformation that happens when you finally release the need to be constantly seen, constantly heard, and constantly remembered. For a long time, many people live with the quiet belief that they must stay visible to stay important. They believe that if they slow down, if they become less available, or if they stop reminding others of their presence, they will fade into the background. So they keep showing up everywhere, keep speaking even when silence would be wiser, and keep giving energy even when their mind feels heavy. But Buddhism teaches something deeply freeing. The more you force your presence, the more you weaken its natural impact, and the moment you stop forcing, your presence begins to carry a quiet strength that people remember without effort. When you try too hard to be noticed, your actions often come from tension rather than peace. You check whether people responded, you wonder how you are perceived, and you feel the need to maintain constant interaction so that nothing feels distant. This cycle slowly drains your emotional energy because your attention is always directed outward. Buddhism reminds us that attachment to recognition creates suffering because it ties your inner stability to external reactions. When you release the pressure to always be present, you begin to feel a new kind of calmness. You realize that your worth does not disappear when you step back, and that stepping back actually allows your true character to become clearer. Think about moments when someone's presence felt meaningful to you. Often, it was not because they were constantly talking or always available. It was because when they appeared, they brought calmness, focus, and authenticity. Their presence felt intentional rather than automatic. This is the energy you begin to develop when you stop forcing yourself into every space. Buddhism teaches that natural influence arises from authenticity, not from effortful performance. When you allow yourself to engage only when it feels aligned with your inner state, your interactions become more genuine, and people begin to associate your presence with clarity rather than noise. Another important shift happens inside your mind. When you stop trying to maintain constant visibility, you create room for deeper awareness. You begin to notice your own rhythm instead of chasing external expectations. You feel less pressure to fill silence with activity, and you start appreciating the quiet moments that once felt uncomfortable. Buddhism describes this as returning to your center, a state where your actions arise from balance rather than from fear of being forgotten. In this centered state, you begin to understand that real influence is not about how often you appear, but about how deeply you connect when you do. As you continue living with less forced presence, you may notice that your relationships begin to feel lighter. Conversations become more meaningful because they are not driven by urgency. You no longer feel responsible for maintaining constant interaction, and this allows others to meet you with equal effort. Buddhism encourages mutual balance, where connection grows from shared awareness rather than from one person's constant giving. When you stop forcing yourself to be everywhere, you allow space for healthier dynamics to form, and this space creates respect naturally. There is also a profound emotional freedom that comes from this shift. When you no longer measure your value by how often you are noticed, you begin to feel stable within yourself. You stop checking whether your presence is being acknowledged, and instead you focus on how you feel internally. Buddhism teaches that true peace arises when your happiness is not dependent on constant feedback. By releasing the need to be unforgettable through effort, you become unforgettable through authenticity, because people sense when someone is at ease within themselves. Your energy begins to change in subtle ways. You move slower, but with more intention. You speak less, but with more clarity. You give attention more selectively, but with deeper care. This shift does not make you distant, it makes you grounded. Buddhism often describes grounded presence as a form of quiet strength, because it allows you to influence your environment without force. When your energy is calm, people naturally feel drawn to it, not because you are trying to impress them, but because your presence feels stable and sincere. Another powerful realization is that you do not need to compete for attention when your energy is balanced. The world often encourages constant visibility, but Buddhism invites you to trust the natural rhythm of connection. When you show up authentically, without trying to control how others perceive you, your presence feels refreshing. You are no longer chasing recognition, you are simply being present. And in that simplicity, your interactions begin to feel deeper, because they are free from the pressure of performance. As this understanding grows, you may notice that moments of absence no longer feel like loss. Instead, they feel like restoration. When you step back, you allow your energy to recharge, and when you return, you bring a renewed sense of clarity. This cycle of engagement and rest mirrors the balance that Buddhism encourages in all aspects of life. Just as the breath moves in and out naturally, your presence also becomes rhythmic rather than constant. And through this rhythm, your influence becomes steady rather than overwhelming. You realize that being unforgettable is not about staying visible, it is about staying authentic. People remember how you made them feel, not how often you appeared. When your presence comes from calm awareness, it leaves a lasting impression because it is rooted in truth rather than effort. Buddhism teaches that authenticity is the most powerful form of expression because it aligns your outer actions with your inner state. When these two become one, your presence feels natural and strong, and you no longer need to force anything. So, if you are learning to step back, to do less, and to stop forcing your presence, trust that this path is not taking you away from connection. It is guiding you toward deeper connection. You are not becoming invisible, you are becoming intentional, and through that intention, you begin to experience a quiet kind of power, a power that does not demand attention, but naturally earns it. The moment you stop trying to be unforgettable is the moment you become unforgettable in the most peaceful way, because your presence is no longer built on effort, but on the calm, grounded energy that arises when you are fully aligned with yourself. 11. The deepest power comes when you become comfortable with being misunderstood. There is a stage in your growth where becoming less available will not only change your routine, it will change how people interpret you. Some may say you have changed. Some may feel you are distant. Some may not understand why you are no longer reacting the same way, why you reply slower, why you no longer explain everything. And this is where one of the deepest lessons of Buddhism begins to unfold. Real power is not just about protecting your time, it is about becoming comfortable with being misunderstood while staying true to your inner peace. Because the moment you stop living to manage everyone's perception of you, you step into a level of emotional freedom that most people never experience. For a long time, many people stay overly available because they fear misunderstanding more than they fear exhaustion. They respond quickly so no one feels ignored. They over-explain so no one feels confused. They keep showing up so no one questions their loyalty. But beneath all of this effort is often a quiet attachment to being seen a certain way. Buddhism teaches that attachment to image creates suffering because you begin to live not as your true self, but as the version of you that others expect. And the moment you begin to detach from constant availability, that image starts to shift, and not everyone will immediately understand it. At first, this can feel uncomfortable. Your mind may want to explain yourself repeatedly, to justify why you need space, to reassure people that you still care. But real growth often requires silence where you once felt the need to speak. Buddhism reminds us that clarity does not always come from explaining more. Sometimes it comes from allowing others to see your actions over time. When you remain calm and consistent in your boundaries, those who truly understand you will adapt naturally. And those who misunderstand you may simply be attached to the old version of you, the version that gave endlessly without pause. Becoming comfortable with being misunderstood does not mean you stop caring about others. It means you stop sacrificing your peace just to maintain a certain image. You begin to realize that you cannot control how everyone perceives you, no matter how much effort you give. Buddhism teaches the principle of non-attachment to outcomes, and this includes letting go of the need to control how people interpret your growth. When you accept that not everyone will understand your silence or your boundaries, you release a heavy emotional burden that many people carry for years. This stage of growth also reveals a deeper truth about relationships. When you stop over-explaining yourself, you begin to see who truly listens, and who only reacts to surface-level changes. Some people will sense your calmness and respect it without needing detailed explanations. Others may project their own fears onto you, assuming your distance means rejection. Buddhism encourages compassion in these moments, not only toward others, but toward yourself. You are allowed to grow without needing everyone's approval, and you are allowed to protect your energy without feeling guilty for it. As you continue practicing balanced availability, you may notice that your confidence begins to change in subtle ways. You no longer feel the urge to defend every decision or clarify every silence. Instead, you trust your own rhythm. You understand that being misunderstood is sometimes part of living authentically. Buddhism teaches that the mind seeks certainty, but true freedom comes from accepting uncertainty without fear. When you let go of the need to be perfectly understood, you begin to experience a deep sense of inner stability that does not depend on external validation. There is also a quiet strength that grows when you allow yourself to be seen as different. You stop trying to fit into expectations that once controlled your behavior. You allow your boundaries to exist without constant explanation, and through this process, you begin to see yourself more clearly. You recognize that your value does not come from being endlessly agreeable or constantly available. It comes from living in alignment with your inner peace. Buddhism often speaks of authenticity as a path to liberation, and authenticity requires the courage to remain steady even when others do not fully understand your choices. Something beautiful begins to happen. The discomfort of being misunderstood starts to fade, and in its place grows a quiet sense of freedom. You realize that you no longer need to perform emotional labor just to maintain harmony. You stop chasing approval, and instead you focus on maintaining balance within yourself. This balance becomes visible in your presence. You move with calmness instead of urgency. You respond with thoughtfulness instead of reaction, and you allow silence to exist without feeling the need to fill it. Another important lesson within this stage is learning to differentiate between kindness and self-sacrifice. Many people confuse being kind with being endlessly available, and they fear that stepping back will make them appear selfish. But Buddhism teaches that compassion must include yourself, because when you abandon your own well-being, your kindness becomes heavy rather than healing. By accepting that some people may misunderstand your boundaries, you give yourself permission to practice a healthier form of compassion, one that allows you to care deeply without losing your balance. As your awareness deepens, you begin to notice that the people who truly belong in your life do not require constant explanation. They sense your growth and adjust naturally. Conversations become calmer, interactions become more respectful, and your presence begins to feel lighter because it is no longer tied to the pressure of being fully understood by everyone. Buddhism reminds us that connection built on awareness is stronger than connection built on constant reassurance. And when you allow relationships to evolve naturally, you create space for deeper understanding to grow over time. You reach a point where being misunderstood no longer feels threatening. It feels like a sign that you are living authentically rather than trying to meet every expectation. You begin to see that not everyone needs to understand your journey for it to be valid. Your peace becomes your guide, and your actions become reflections of your inner clarity rather than responses to external pressure. This is where real power begins to take shape, because you are no longer seeking approval to maintain your boundaries. The deepest power comes when your calmness remains steady, even in the face of misunderstanding. You learn to listen without absorbing negativity, to respond without losing your balance, and to remain grounded even when others project their own fears onto you. Buddhism teaches that the strongest mind is not the one that avoids difficulty, but the one that remains centered through it. And when you reach this stage, your presence begins to feel unshakable because it is no longer built on external validation, but on inner understanding. So if your journey toward being less available sometimes brings moments where you feel misunderstood, remember that this is not a sign of failure, it is a sign of growth. You are learning to live from awareness rather than from attachment to approval. You are discovering that your peace does not need constant explanation to exist. And in that discovery, you begin to experience a freedom that is quiet, yet powerful, a freedom that allows you to move through life with calm confidence, knowing that your value is not defined by how perfectly others understand you, but by how deeply you remain aligned with yourself. 12. When you master your time, you master your mind. There comes a point in your journey where you begin to realize that becoming less available is not only about people, it is about the relationship you have with your own time. For a long time, many individuals believe that time is something they must give away freely in order to feel needed, respected, or connected. They fill every moment with responses, obligations, conversations, and emotional labor without noticing that their inner world slowly becomes crowded and restless. Buddhism teaches that time is not just a schedule, it is a reflection of your mind. Wherever your time flows, your thoughts follow. And when your time is scattered across too many demands, your mind loses its center. But when you begin to master your time with awareness, you discover that you are also mastering your inner state. Most people do not intentionally lose control of their time. It happens quietly through small habits. You answer immediately because you feel responsible. You agree to things even when you feel tired because you don't want to disappoint anyone. You allow interruptions because silence feels uncomfortable. Slowly, your days stop belonging to you. Buddhism encourages deep observation of these patterns, not with judgment, but with curiosity. When you start noticing how often your attention is pulled away from what truly matters to you, you begin to see that time management is actually energy management. Each decision about where you place your time is a decision about where you place your life. Mastering your time does not mean becoming rigid or distant. It means becoming intentional. It means understanding that every moment you protect is a moment where your mind can breathe. When you stop allowing constant interruptions, your thoughts begin to slow down. You feel less rushed, less reactive, and more grounded. Buddhism describes this grounded state as mindfulness in action, where you are fully present with what you are doing, instead of being mentally divided across multiple expectations. In this state, even simple tasks feel calmer because your attention is no longer scattered. Another powerful aspect of mastering your time is learning to recognize the difference between urgency and importance. Many things feel urgent because they demand immediate attention, but they are not always meaningful. Messages, requests, and conversations often carry the illusion of urgency, pulling you into constant activity. Buddhism teaches that true awareness allows you to pause before reacting, to ask yourself whether something truly deserves your energy at that moment. This pause creates space for wiser decisions, and through repeated practice, your mind becomes less reactive and more discerning. As you begin to honor your time more deeply, your relationship with yourself also begins to change. You stop feeling like you are constantly behind or overwhelmed. Instead, you feel a quiet sense of control over your own rhythm. You realize that your worth is not measured by how busy you appear, but by how balanced you feel. Buddhism reminds us that balance is not something you achieve once. It is something you practice daily through small acts of awareness. Each time you choose to protect your focus instead of reacting instantly, you strengthen your ability to remain calm, even in a fast-moving world. Mastering your time also transforms how others experience you. When you stop being endlessly available, people begin to notice that your presence has structure and intention. Conversations become more meaningful because you engage when you are truly present rather than when you feel pressured. This does not create distance, it creates clarity. Buddhism teaches that clarity in action builds trust, because others begin to see that your words and actions come from mindfulness rather than from habit. Over time, this consistency becomes a form of quiet leadership, showing others that boundaries are not barriers, but expressions of self-respect. There is also a deeper emotional freedom that grows when you learn to protect your time. You stop feeling guilty for needing space because you understand that rest is part of growth. Buddhism often speaks of the importance of stillness, not as an escape from life, but as a way to understand it more deeply. When you allow yourself moments of uninterrupted time, you begin to notice subtle changes in your thoughts and emotions. You feel less reactive, more patient, and more connected to your own direction. This inner stability becomes a source of strength that cannot be shaken by external pressure. As your awareness expands, you may begin to see that mastering your time is also about mastering your attention. Time and attention are deeply connected. Where one goes, the other follows. If your attention is constantly divided, your time feels rushed. But when you focus your attention fully on one thing at a time, your experience of time changes. Moments feel fuller, and your mind feels calmer. Buddhism teaches that true presence is not about doing less or more, it is about being fully engaged with whatever you choose to do. And when you master your time, you give yourself the opportunity to live in that state more often. Another important lesson within this process is learning to release the fear of missing out. Many people remain overly available because they worry that stepping back will cause them to lose opportunities or connections. But Buddhism encourages trust in the natural flow of life. Not every moment needs to be filled, and not every opportunity requires immediate action. When you trust that what is truly aligned with you will remain, you begin to relax into your own rhythm. This trust allows you to make choices from calmness rather than from anxiety, and that calmness strengthens your presence in ways that constant activity never could. Mastering your time becomes less about discipline and more about harmony. You no longer feel like you are fighting against your schedule. Instead, you feel like you are moving with it. Your days begin to reflect your values rather than external demands. You wake up with a clearer sense of direction, and you end your day with less mental exhaustion. Buddhism teaches that harmony arises when your outer actions align with your inner awareness, and mastering your time is one of the most direct ways to create that alignment. You reach a point where protecting your time feels natural rather than forced. You no longer need to remind yourself to slow down, because your mind has learned to move at a steadier pace. You understand that being less available is not about withdrawing from life. It is about living more intentionally within it. Your presence becomes calmer, your focus becomes sharper, and your relationships become more balanced because they are no longer driven by constant urgency. So if you are learning to become less available, remember that this journey is also about learning to value your own moments. Every boundary you set around your time is a statement that your life has meaning. Every pause you take before reacting is a reminder that your mind deserves peace. Buddhism teaches that mastering the mind begins with mastering attention, and attention begins with how you use your time. When you honor your time, you honor yourself, and through that honor, you discover a deeper form of strength, one that is quiet, steady, and rooted in the awareness that your life is not something to be rushed through, but something to be lived with calm intention. Conclusion. So, if you have been feeling tired from always being available, always replying fast, always showing up, even when your mind feels heavy, let this be a moment of awakening instead of guilt. Buddhism teaches that suffering often begins when we forget to protect our own energy, when we believe that doing more will make us stronger, or that giving more will make us more valuable. But real strength is not created by constant effort. It is created by balance. It is created when you learn to pause, to observe, and to choose your presence with intention instead of habit. Becoming less available does not mean you stop caring about people, and it does not mean you become distant or cold. It means you begin to care about yourself with the same compassion you offer others. It means you stop reacting to everything and start responding from calm awareness. It means you understand that your time, your attention, and your peace are not endless resources, but sacred parts of your life that deserve protection. And when you begin to live this way, something powerful changes inside you. Your mind becomes quieter, your actions become clearer, and your presence begins to carry a calm strength that others can feel without you needing to prove anything. Remember, the goal is not to disappear from the world. The goal is to return to yourself. Do less, but do it with awareness. Speak less, but let your words carry meaning. Be present, but only where your energy feels respected and aligned. Buddhism reminds us that peace grows when attachment fades, and when you stop trying to be everywhere for everyone, you finally create space to become fully present in your own life. If people misunderstand your silence, stay calm. If your boundaries feel uncomfortable at first, stay patient. Growth always feels unfamiliar before it feels natural. Over time, you will notice that your life becomes lighter, your mind becomes steadier, and your relationships become more genuine because they are built on balance instead of pressure. You will realize that power is not loud, it is quiet. It is not forced, it is steady. And it does not come from constant availability, it comes from inner clarity. So from today, choose your time wisely, choose your presence intentionally, and choose your peace without apology. Let your energy become focused instead of scattered, and let your silence become a place where your strength grows. Because the moment you stop overgiving is the moment you begin living with purpose, and the moment you learn to step back with awareness is the moment you truly become powerful. If this message reached your heart, comment below. I protect my peace. And stay connected for more Buddhist teachings that help you build calm strength, deep awareness, and a life guided by inner balance.